When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there world, how are we? Ready for another episode of Join Up Dots, episode 309? I'm ready for it, so I hope you're ready for it, because today's guest is a lady who, like many of us, had a path to where she is today, which was full of the kind of dots that you can't see at the time, but became crystal clear much later on in life. She's the creative designer at the design company Malani Studios in Houston, Texas, where she spends her days helping small businesses with the kind of creative ventures that we all struggle with: video services, website development, and multimedia design. But this isn't a story about an entrepreneurial leap of faith, but a story of waking up one day to take on a normal day that would turn out to be extraordinary. Now, back in 2010, her life was literally thrown into the air when a freak accident happened to her, which of course happens to thousands of people every day, but we never really feel that it will happen to us. One day she was crossing the street and a car came from nowhere and hit her, and that one incident changed her life and helped her rediscover her life's purpose after losing track of it in her early 20s. And now, as she says, I've picked up 100% and full steam ahead for the rest of my life. I created an initiative called Vivadivine. It's geared towards conscious living, defining a purpose-driven life, and much more. I'm also pursuing my goal to become a life coach. But this goes much deeper than this, as the phrase Vivadivine had been one that she'd been living with for over 26 years and started in the most opposite of directions that you can imagine. Yes, a close friend, Granger Sanders, coined the words, and now not a day will go by when she doesn't think, man, those dots in my life so joined up. So how did it come about that this alter ego was born and stayed with her for so many years? And would she look back on that dreadful day when her body took a pounding from the car and think, thank God for that, or God, I wish that had never happened? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Debbie Mack. How are you, Debbie?
I am doing wonderful, David. Thank you for such a wonderful intro. Wow.
That's you, isn't it? That's your life.
That is my life in a nutshell. Yes, it is.
So is it a sort of life in a nutshell? When you look at it, is it kind of like, and we are obviously going to delve into this, but is it kind of parceled up in two halves, or is that too simplistic?
It's two halves. The first half is pretty quiet, and the second half is one big wild adventure. It really has been.
And is it really wild? When you say the word wild, being a 44-year-old man from the United Kingdom, I can be pretty wild. So how wild is wild in your world?
Let's just say I am not afraid to embrace whatever my spiritual awakening has presented to me. I have embraced it 100%, and I definitely appreciate what I have learned from it, because it helps me and it also helps other people.
In what way? Well, let's start actually. So what is the spiritual awakening? Because we're not talking sort of religious, we're talking about within you somehow, are we?
Well, I think most people are actually born awake. And what happens is we fall asleep at some point in our life. Some of us don't, but some of us do. And then we have a reawakening. And in that reawakening, we kind of discover who we are and what we're really here to do. And a lot of times in that reawakening, it's almost shocking because we realize we've been living an awareness for a very long time. We just weren't putting the dots together, as you say, and join the dots. And once we put the dots together, then it's like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing this to help people. So I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, my reawakening in my, I'd say, early 40s was the car hitting me as a catalyst to say, you were supposed to be doing this all along. You fell asleep. Now it's time to wake up. Get on the ball, girlfriend. It's time to roll.
I like the way you say that, girlfriend. I can imagine you doing a little hand gesture thing that which my daughter does very well, but I can't quite do it when you sort of flick your hand both ways and click your fingers at the same time, girlfriend. So
it's a learned thing.
Yeah, I can imagine you've got to practice on that. So I love the way you say that, sort of reawakening, because it is, isn't it? I think you're the first guest to coin it that way, but you do kind of feel that you have slept walked somehow. You've gone through the motions, you go to work every day, you earn your money, you go out having a few drinks with your close friends and stuff, but it's kind of, it's life in a protection bubble somehow. You haven't really realised that life is there to live. You're just existing somehow.
Right. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Oh, I was expecting more from that. That was a big,
okay.
That was a big ranty phrase I started with.
Well, I know what it feels like to be kind of wondering. You know something is missing. You know something is off in your life, but you can't really put a finger on it. And it takes a catalyst to kind of jolt you into a place of questioning. For me, it was, I am not happy. And why am I not happy? And what does happy feel like? And so I started to ask for my happiness. And it took a while, but in a course of a year, I got to the happiness. And that's when the reawakening started for me. I think I've always been awake. I just think I put myself in a position for 20 years of not wanting to be awake and wanting to be led. And that's not who I was. And so when I woke up, it was kind of like, I know what I should be doing, and this is what it is. And it doesn't matter what people think and what they might think I'm a little bit off or crazy. That's fine. I've been that way since childhood, but I'm going to do this because now I know what I'm here to do. And whoever I take with me is going to be doing what they're supposed to do. And that's what I'm about. I'm about collaboration. It's not all about me. It's about everybody else that's with me.
Now, the interesting thing in that phrase was you've been like this since childhood. And it does seem a connection that we have built up on the show, and is one that we talk about literally every episode, really, that we know what we're supposed to be when we're little, but we forget somewhere along the line. And if you can connect with that real younger version of yourself, that is your kind of life values. That's the passions. That's the things that you liked when you was a young kid that you love now. Because I've just rediscovered this. I mentioned this the other day on the show, that I'm suddenly back into jigsaw puzzles. I used to love jigsaw puzzles when I was a kid, and I kind of just stopped doing them. And my daughter, who's 9, has just got into them, and we're doing them like madmen. As soon as we finish one, another one comes out, and another one comes out, and there's no point to it. That's the beauty, and that's the kind of message for life generally. When you're willing to do something just because there's no point, you just love doing it, that is a good indicator of what you should be doing. And for me, at the moment, jigsaw puzzles sort of shows me that there's things that don't give me money, but it gives me enjoyment, and that's an indication of what I should be doing.
I agree. For me, I think from my childhood, it was always reading and writing. And I was a huge bookworm. I would spend hours reading a book. There are pictures of me as a child reading. And composition was something that I grew up with. And it was just a natural for me. So I've always been writing since I was a child. And that has followed me through my adult life. And journaling is something that I do on a regular basis. And I have boxes of my life that I have written about for years. So when Vivadivine kind of expanded itself to me a couple of years ago, I went back to what was natural for me. So jigsaw puzzles were natural for you. Writing is natural for me. I started to write. I started to express myself, especially because as a Black woman, I couldn't find anybody online or on the internet who I could relate to who was having a spiritual awakening. So I started to write down my experiences, and that's how Vivadivine kind of came about, which was sharing the craziness that I was going through, which wasn't the devil. It was actually the universe trying to shift me into where I was supposed to be. So that's where my writing came in. So for jigsaw puzzles, that is David's awesome thing. And then writing is my awesome thing. And then other people have their awesome thing. And that's how we contribute to the whole consciousness of people waking up and realizing life is supposed to be really bigger than you think it is.
So in the introduction, I mentioned, did you look back on the dreadful day when your body took a pounding from the car and think, thank God for that, or God, I wish that never happened? What way do you perceive that now when you look back on it? And we are going to sort of work out how it happened and what happened afterwards. But is it a good thing or a bad thing that you got hit by the car?
David, I am forever grateful for that lady and her white SUV who hit me that day. Because if it were not for her, I would probably still be stuck in a world where I was slowly dying. That accident on a beautiful, clear February day literally changed my life, and I'm forever grateful for it.
So how did it happen then? You're just walking along and she wasn't paying attention, or were you not paying attention?
Well, it was really odd because it was a beautiful day, like I said, and I was going shopping. I don't even know why, but I was going to the mall, and I happened to park across the mall at a garage that we really shouldn't be parking at, but I was jaywalking that day. And I stepped into the roadway, and my path was clear. And I happened to look to my left, and I saw a lady coming down the street in a white SUV, and I said, wow, she's driving really fast, so I need to pick up my pace so I could clear her car. And I started walking faster, and she came right up on me, and she literally clipped me with her bumper. But I really thought that I had cleared her car. But that little clip that she hit me with, it knocked me into the street. And I'll never forget, the sky was the bluest sky I've ever seen. And I'm laying in the street thinking, this would only happen to me. I will be the only person that I know that will get hit by a car and survive it. And
so how hard were you hit then? Were you kind of did you just stumble, or were you really hit hard?
Well, the way it was, it was not a really hard hit, but it was enough for me to, in my brain, go, I don't need to be hit. I'm too cute. My hair is pretty today. I don't need to be hit in this long coat. Why are you hitting me, lady? And I literally just, I tried to not fall in the street because I'm such a diva. I still fell anyway. And the doctors couldn't find where I'd been hit because it wasn't a major hit. It was just enough to shock my body when I hit the ground. So
why did it have such a big impact on you? Not obviously the car, but emotionally. Why did it awaken you when it kind of sounds a bit like a glancing blow?
It was a glancing blow, but the shock of hitting the ground jarred my body. So for about a week and a half, my body was in shock. And I was literally on my sofa the following week, and I vividly remembered I was watching TV, and it was kind of like it just hit me. I got hit by a car. I could have been dead, but I'm not, and I'm not happy. Something has to change. And that's when I started looking at the things in my life, my marriage, my belief system, the job that I loved, but I knew I had grown out of. Those three elements were causing me so much pain in my life. And that is, at that moment, I knew I had to make a change.
Right.
That accident.
So that's the big question, Ben. It is not so much the car. It's more that you started actually reflecting on everything in your life, and it's the happiness, isn't it? That's the key thing. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm not happy, everyone can get over being glanced by a car, but happiness is difficult to deal with. So it put you into that position where you started looking at everything.
I think that accident made me stop. I think it made me stop and pay attention to what was going on at my life at that moment, because I could have been killed. And I also had a huge flash forward of me laying on my deathbed. And I hadn't done certain things. I hadn't said certain things to certain people. And I just didn't want to have that regret in my life. And that accident caused me to stop and think about everything, because I had been really unhappy for a very long time. I'd also had a lot of depressive episodes. And so I think that was the catalyst to kind of made me snap out of it and think about things a little bit differently. And what did I really want out of my life?
So why were you unhappy then, Debbie? What was going on?
Oh, wow. I think I was in a mind prison of beliefs, and I had grown up with these beliefs all my life, and I wasn't really thinking for myself. And I really wanted to feel free and guilt free and stress free about my life. I always felt like I was very different and I didn't fit in with these beliefs, this belief system. And that was one of the things that was really wearing on my soul. My marriage was very challenging. I knew it wasn't supposed to be the way it was, and I shouldn't be in it, but I didn't know how to leave it. And then I loved my job, but I knew that I had grown out of it. I was a flight attendant, and I didn't want to fly anymore, but I wanted to be creative. And I knew that I had to push through somehow to get past these elements in my life so I could feel that lightness of being that people would feel. I was always positive, but I knew I wasn't living. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense. And I was just thinking about all the listeners out there, because so many of them will have that question. I'm unhappy, but I'm not sure why. And that's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? It's very easy if you're in a relationship that you think that the other person's an idiot and you can't bear them anymore. That's kind of acceptable. And it's kind of easy when you're in a job and you've got a boss that doesn't respect you and the work's rubbish. That's all okay. But when it's just that kind of I'm not happy, how do you nail it? How do you sort of drill down and find out what really is the crux to making you unhappy?
I think we know. I think we always know what's making us unhappy. I think we distract ourselves by finding other people, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I think we find things to distract us from actually being quiet enough to admit to ourselves that we are missing something. And for me, that accident forced me to be quiet. I didn't have a choice but to sit on that sofa and feel better. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't feel really happy. Something is missing. I need to address it. And I think for a lot of people, that's where they miss that opportunity. It's because they don't get a chance to be quiet enough. They don't lose enough friends. They don't get isolated enough for them to really think about their life.
It is fascinating, this. I've done 300 plus episodes of this show, and probably the first 250 we never really mentioned about getting quiet. Now, we mentioned about how many successful people will meditate and sort of disconnect from the computers and all that kind of stuff. But in the last 50 episodes, this theory of actually getting quiet and letting your thoughts come through you, and that's the true life force that you're kind of suppressing or you're not listening to. It is really important, isn't it, to just sit there and think?
It's very important to connect with that inner voice that you've always had, but you just kind of covered it with everybody else's voice or other stuff because it always tells the truth. And sometimes the truth is really hard to hear. And sometimes we don't want to hear it. But I'm a big believer in communicating with, whatever you want to call it, source, God, Almighty, universe, whatever you want to call it, and then allowing yourself to be quiet so you can actually start hearing the responses you need that will direct you to where you have to go.
Let's play some words that really emphasize this. This is what Oprah Winfrey said.
The way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move? Not think about, oh, I got all of this stuff. What is the next right move? And then from that space, make the next right move and the next right move. And not to be overwhelmed by it because you know your life is bigger than that one moment. You know you're not defined by what somebody says is a failure for you, because failure is just there to point you in a different direction.
So it's exactly as she's saying, by actually just looking at what the next step is and allowing that voice to come through, it really does point you in the right direction, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. And I'm going to tell you something. That is one of my favorite Oprah Winfrey quotes. Actually, I've seen that video where she talks about that. And I am a firm believer in you always know the right steps. You take that, you ask yourself, what is that first right step? And then it's like the answer comes. And what is the next right step? The answer comes. It's almost easy to live if we would just learn or get back to that place within ourselves where we just start listening to that voice that's directing us to where we're supposed to go. Every step that we take is either going to take us closer or further away from our purpose in life.
It does sound simple when you say that. And I'm a great believer in it, but it's easy to be a believer in it when you've already started taking those steps. It's when you haven't, and you listen to these podcasts and you read self-development books and you read biographies and all that kind of stuff, and you think, that's the life I want. And I get emails from people constantly, and they all pretty much are almost asking for permission to try. And you can read between the lines. And I sort of go back to them and say, look, you don't need me. You don't need anyone. You just need to do it. And you need to do something. It doesn't matter what it is. And it might be the wrong thing for you, but it starts you moving away from that quicksand that you're in. And if you allow yourself to stay in that, that's all you're going to get. But just pull yourself out. Don't matter what direction you go in, just pull yourself out and then start looking around. And then you can start doing those steps.
I always believe you have to make your mind over. You have to make your mind over to what it is you really want in life. And if you can get your mind trained and you can say to yourself, this is what I want, despite of what is happening around me, this is what I want. And you put that energy out into the universe or whatever, you will start to attract what you need to accomplish that desire. I always tell people it's really simple. When you go to eat at a restaurant, your favorite restaurant, and you order steak, do you order the steak and then wonder, what is the cook doing? How's he cooking my steak? What's he putting on my steak? You order your steak the way you want it. You put your order in, the steak comes to you, usually the way you asked for it. It's the same thing with the universe. You put your order in, you don't wonder, how is it going to come back cooked? You just know you asked for it this way and expect it to come back that way. And for me, in the last 5 years, I have seen proof of that.
So if we went right back in time, Granger Sanders, who seemed a fascinating character to me, and left you a kind of legacy to take forward, he almost sounded like a kind of angel that was kind of in your life and was protecting you and showing you the way, and unfortunately he sort of departed. He passed away. Well, was he very much like that? Tell us about Granger Sanders, because he had a big effect on your life, didn't he?
Well, you have to understand the background that I grew up in. I grew up in a very religious background, and I was never exposed to gay people at all. So when I left home at 18, it was really odd that I met these wonderful people who were just flamboyant, and I loved them. And Granger was one of those people. And I was a very impressionable 18-year-old that he basically took under his wing and protected me because I was out of control. I really was. I'd never left home before, and I was just excited about life. And he took me in, and he clothed me, he fed me, he made sure that I didn't get in trouble. But he also saw in me, I think, this exuberance for life. And so what he did was he took me to gay clubs. And I'd never been to a gay club in my entire life. And I was just exposed to so much so quickly. And he said to me one day, he said, I think you'd be great on stage. So why don't we get you dressed up and let's find a name for you? And that's how Vivadivine came about. And I will say that he had a huge impact in my life. He was like a father figure to me. I knew his death was impending when he got sick. And there's not a day that I do not write or do something for Vivadivine where I do not think about him. And I'm so grateful that he gave me that name because it has followed me all my life. And now I know why, because it's meant for something bigger.
So what did he see in you then? Why did he want to protect you?
I think I was an innocent. I think I am an innocent, and I think I am an honest person, and I'm not easily contaminated. I can be in any situation and not absorb negativity. And what you see is what you get. I'm very WYSIWYG.
Hang on, what does that mean? WYSIWYG? What does that mean?
WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. It's a IT term.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So whatever you see, whatever you're hearing, David, this is really who I am. And so he protected me because in the real world, people like me get taken advantage of. People like me probably get run over. So he was very protective because he would always say, child, I need to watch you because you're going to get in trouble. That's how he would talk to me, because he just knew I had a very open personality for people. I really genuinely love people. I'm a lover, and that's who I've always been. So he just felt like he needed to protect me and watch out for me. But I've always had friends like that. They always realized, okay, she's the wild child. We need to watch her because she's just going to love everybody. Not everybody loves her. So I've always had friends like that.
And have you always been like that, even as a small girl? Were you somebody that was a big heart on legs, just sort of walking around?
I never understood fighting. I never understood anger. I never understood people not getting along. I always wanted collaboration and unity with people. But then I always felt like I was very solo. So I've always been a peacemaker. I'm always the one that's reconciliatory. I'm always trying to make things work. That's just who I am. That's my nature. And I learned not to fight it because that's my spirit. And that's probably why I'm here on this planet, to kind of help people get along. It's like life is too short to fight,
Well, I know totally. I don't want to fight with anyone. I've only had one fight in my life, and that's when I was at school. And I won that one, Debbie. I won that. I'm unbeaten. So in your sort of world, is it the case then that you knew what you wanted to be, you knew how you should be, but responsibility in how you perceived other people wanted you to live just took over?
I knew how I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I didn't believe what other people's vision was for me. So I knew I was a lover. I knew I was a peacemaker. I knew I was a collaborator. I knew I wanted to bring people together. When I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I liked people and I liked having fun. And I think after high school, I was on a path that would have unfolded eventually to what I'm doing today. But I circumvented it because of what other people wanted me to be. And I got re-engaged into my old belief system in my early 20s, which was what shut me down. So when I came out of that belief system, I knew what I was going to do. I knew who I was, and I didn't care what people thought I should be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And do you think that's a key thing that people have to get into their heart or their heads or whatever? That you just think, I don't care what other people think, this is my life?
I've always felt out of place. I've always felt like I was weird. And I understand now why I felt that way, because sometimes you're meant to do something that's really different than what your friends are doing. I've never been a follower. I've always been a collaborator. I guess in a way I'm a leader, but not an obvious one, because I don't really want people to follow me. But for me, it's kind of like, let's work together. And I think sometimes we get caught up in what we think we should be in the eyes of other people. And at the end of the day, it's not going to fit their vision. Your vision has been crafted for you. And you have to get quiet enough, get silent enough so you can hear what that vision is and then pursue it with faith.
So the $1 million question, all the listeners out there that are listening to this conversation, and I'm sure there's more than 10, let's say, there's thousands, but there's a lot of people sitting there listening, and they're thinking to themselves, I know what she's saying. I know that. I feel weird. I don't feel that this should be my thing, but I don't know what it should be. How would you sort of advise them to sort of get over that weirdness and start to drill down to what they should be doing?
For me, it was communication. And I don't ever try and ascertain another person's belief system. I mean, they're atheists or agnostic. They're people who are believers in all kinds of things. But I do believe that there is something that we're connected to that has part of the puzzle that we need that fits into everything. And for me, it was a moment of gratitude where I just said, okay, I don't know how this happened, but I'm happy. And whatever I need to do to show appreciation for my happiness, then I am asking for direction. How do I help another person, one person, feel what I feel? And so I think if a person is trying to figure out how to find their purpose, larger purpose or smaller purpose in life, you have to ask what it is. And for me, it was, what do you love doing? I love to write. I love people. I love to share. I love to share my experiences. And so that was the first indication for me that's the path I should go. The path of finding your purpose is never linear. It's never straight. It's very curvy. So it started out with writing for me. Then it went to videos. It went to, okay, I want to help people. So now maybe I should get my life coaching certificate. Or maybe down the road I become a psychologist. It's very linear. So you have to ask. And usually when you ask, you start getting these answers of look into your childhood. Look at the things you loved, your passion. How does whatever talent you have lean into your purpose in life? And it's about serving others with that passion. So I would always advise people, if you want to know what you're supposed to do, ask and then pay attention, because the answers usually are linked to somewhere that you just have a love for, and it's usually stemming from your childhood.
I agree with that totally. But when you say ask, was there exercises? Did you do any? Did you write things down? You didn't just sit there and sort of ask, did you?
No, I asked.
Oh, you did? You just actually spoke out loud?
My friends have a running joke. It's like, you always ask for what you want. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to ask God for what I want. I'm going to ask him specifically for what I want, because who else is going to give it to me? I mean, you can pray that's your mode of communication. You can journal if that's what makes you feel comfortable. But for me, I straight up had a conversation where I just said, I want to help. I'm sacrificing my life, and this is what I want to offer in exchange for my happiness. And meditation, I believe, is the pathway of getting those answers. But I got a specific answer when I asked to help, when I asked to be part of whatever purpose there are people that are out there that are doing things that are making a difference. I got a specific answer, and that is how I knew, oh, okay, so they heard me, so I need to get on the ball. But if you prayer, meditation, journaling, spending time with yourself, listening to your inner voice, those are all ways of communicating so you can get the information that you need so you can fulfill your task on this planet.
Do people have to, well, as you say, it's a curly career, it's a squiggly line, it's just start doing something in any direction. Do you think that is really the key point to everything? The whole conversation that we're having, is it just do something? Doesn't matter what it is, just do something.
No, I think there's something you're supposed to do. I think each and every one of us has a purpose here, rich or poor, young or old, black or white. I think we all have a purpose. We all have something to teach and something to learn. And if a person can get to a place where they're asking the questions of, why am I here? Why am I here? What am I here to do, and what is my purpose? And I know Deepak Chopra uses those three questions to kind of get people to think. And if people would sit and ask those questions, I think they would get their answers. Even if you are a poor person living on the side of the street and you're at your wit's end, I think if you ask that question, you're going to get an answer. Because I know what the answer is for me when I see that person on the street. The answer is, I need to help them. So they have their answer and I have my answer. But you have to ask for it, because I don't think a lot of us understand that there is something out there that wants us to get it.
But what people will struggle with is the fact that, yes, they might find the passion, but how do you make money from it? They might think to themselves, yeah, I know I love doing this, but how do you make a living from it? That's the mental block, isn't it?
But that's the thing, you don't have to make money from it. You don't have to make money from it. The energy that you put into whatever your purpose or your passion is goes back out, and it creates more energy. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. All I know is I'm supposed to do it. Is it going to make me $1 million one day? I don't know. I don't care. All I know is I'm talking to you, and I know that that's part of putting the story out there. I think if you go into it thinking dollar signs, you've lost a little piece of that energy, that purpose. You go into this because you really love what you're doing. You really see a difference. When people reach out to me privately and ask me questions and I don't feel qualified to answer, that still tells me that I'm doing something that's in line with the original purpose. I don't make a single dime off of Vivadivine. Well, maybe 25 cents. But I don't make anything off of it, but I still get up every single day, and it's the first thing I want to do, because I know that somewhere down the line, somebody's getting a little bit of help or a little bit of encouragement, and that keeps me going.
And so are you aiming for Vivadivine to be a business?
I don't have control of it. I think Vivadivine is something that doesn't belong to me. I am just the voice and the girl behind it. I think it was something that was given to me to utilize and help people. Wherever it goes, I've always said, I don't want fame because I can't handle not walking down the street and not being able to have a normal life. But wherever it goes, I do know that I'll be able to handle it. But I know it's something that's important, and so that's why I keep working on it. Wherever it goes, it's not up to me. It's up to something way bigger than me. I'm just doing the work.
I do agree with what you're saying. Starting this show, for months and months and months, I didn't earn a penny from it. And it was very long hours, and it was very, very tiring. But it is the foundations, isn't it? That's what you're doing, and you're getting better at doing it, and you're getting noticed, and you're just pushing it forward. It's the old phrase about 80% of a rocket's power is used just getting off the ground. And then once you get to a certain point, things become a lot easier. And so did you feel at the moment that you're pushing Vivadivine forward, but ultimately it's just going to sort of float away from you?
I feel like it's dragging me. I feel like I can't keep up with it sometimes, because I created a situation where I have to, write 3 pieces a week. I have to tweet whatever information is coming to me and share with people. Sometimes I don't sleep at night because I'm laying in the bed going, I want to sleep, but information is just coming through my brain. I feel like it's almost on its own, and all I have to do is just kind of ride with it.
And is that hard or easy?
I have a full-time job, and then I have a full-time purpose. And I'm always trying to figure out I know it's more important, but I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do both without blowing out a fuse in my brain. And so for me, it's kind of like I put Vivadivine first. Vivadivine wakes me up in the morning and it puts me to sleep at night. I am constantly writing in my head. And a lot of the things and I want people to know this, a lot of the things that I write and a lot of the things that I talk about, it's not out of my head. It's coming from a different place, because sometimes I read what I've written and I'm thinking, I didn't say that. That's not from me. So a lot of times it's incessant, and I've asked for breaks, and I'm like, I know I asked for this to be a voice, and for a long time nobody saw my face on this Vivadivine thing, and it was kind of like, we need a face on it, so put your face on it. And then it started to get it like crescendoed. And then I get breaks. I get breaks where nothing comes, and I just kind of sit around going, okay, I'm on vacation. But Vivadivine has a life of its own. It was never mine. It was just something that was given to me that has stuck with me. And I'm just, making sure that I handle it properly for whatever the purpose is maybe to help people, understand spiritual awakening. And like I said, as a Black woman, being a conscious human being, because I couldn't find anyone like me. And I thought I was losing my marbles when I started to wake up. But as I am, being able to speak more with Vivadivine, I'm finding more and more people are, especially people of color, are reaching out to me, and they're like, okay, I thought I was crazy. I'm like, no, you're not. You're normal.
But
it's just an awakening.
I think once again, you're saying so many interesting things, but I think one of the interesting things that you said, and I'm sure you're not even aware of it, was when you read your words and you think, I never wrote those. That is called about being in flow, and that's that power source when you totally are connected to what you should be doing, and you don't have to think about it. And when you see all the successful guys and ladies out there, and especially sportsmen, but just for those moments can't do anything wrong because they're in the zone, they're in that state of flow, that's hugely powerful, isn't it? Because I listen back to some of my shows and I hear myself talking about stuff, and I don't ever remember having those thoughts in my head, although it's my voice, and I listen back to it and I think, God, he's making a lot of sense there. Where did that come from? And that is a great state, and that's a great position for people to get a clear understanding that they're on the right path, isn't it? When they're losing hours of their life because they're so engrossed in something, and they're not looking at the clock thinking, 2 hours till lunchtime, 3 hours till home time, and all that kind of stuff. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think that's a key point, that you are on the right path if that's happening.
I literally spent the last 7 months basically just writing for Vivadivine, and I said, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to talk about? And I would always get some kind of interesting inspiration to write about. And there were times when I would literally be writing a post, and I would literally feel like someone said, don't write that. Don't say that. And I would have a back and forth. And I'd realize in the back and forth, I was fighting with whatever inspiration I was getting. And I said, oh, okay. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to write. Or there were times where I could feel like I was forcing the post. And then I kid you not, David, I would write a post. The next day, something completely different would come into my mind, and I would not use the original one. I would go with the one that came at the last minute. And it would flow so effortlessly. When I was done writing, I would just say to myself, that is not me. That's not me.
You see it all the time, don't you, with musicians and everyone really, and it's just marvelous, isn't it, when it does happen to you? But I spent years and years and years working in corporate gigs, and it rarely ever happened to me. It was just a slog to get through the days.
It's a different feeling. It's like almost, and you might be able to relate to it because you're doing the show. You just get on this roll. And the next thing you know, it's kind of like, whoa, what just happened? It's the same thing when I start writing and I post and I read and then people respond, and I'm thinking, you guys realize that's not me. That's not Debbie. That's something up there that's filtering, because I asked to help one person. I ask, is there somebody out there that needs to hear something today and they can receive it from me? And so something always seems to pop up. And I learned to trust it. I learned not to rely on my own understanding. I learned to just kind of like ask for what somebody else needs, or what do I need to help me get through this day.
Have you taken a risk in your life doing this? Have you taken a risk trying to balance your full-time gig with this? Is something going to suffer?
I do know that I was asking for time to focus on Vivadivine. And then my contract, I'm a contract instructional designer, that ended abruptly. But I saw it as an opportunity. And I said, wow, I am going to write for however long I'm off. I've got savings, I'm going to make it work. And I wrote and I focused on that for 7 months. And then I was recently given another job opportunity. And I'm already thinking that I'm going to take a risk at some point and say, I don't know how it's going to happen, but Vivadivine is going to make sure that I am financially covered so I can keep doing it. I don't see myself working a full-time gig for the rest of my life. I do see Vivadivine at some point paying me for the hard brain work that I'm doing at night when I can't sleep. It's something that I really want to focus on. It's something that, for me, it brings me joy every day to get up and, interact with people and share things with people. I can see how people make their purpose their life. I really can.
And I'm going to play the words of Steve Jobs now, that are the theme to the whole show. And I'm going to be fascinated to see whether they have resonance to you and whether you can actually join up the dots of your life, which so many of our guests can. This is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
So do they make all the difference?
Yes. You cannot connect the dots until you see them looking backwards. But when you get to the point where you realize they are dots, you can start connecting them to the future. And I think that is where I'm at right now. I can see the past dots, and I can look at the future and go, oh, I know what to do next, or I know what will happen next, or I know who will help me next. I know what will show up next. You start to be able to see, because you're able to make those right steps that Oprah talked about. You're able to make those right steps. And so you kind of know where you're going to go.
So what was your big dot in your life when you look back on it? What was the moment? Was it the car hitting you? Was it the realization that you wasn't happy? Was it Mr. Sanders? What was your big dot?
I think my biggest dot was moving out on my own at 18. I think if I had learned how to be a little bit more self-sufficient and not, at 21, run back home to mommy and religion, I think I probably would have created a path of where I would have already been so far ahead today. But that's okay, because I believe that altered pathway taught me a lot of lessons that I needed to learn. But I think 18 was my first dot, because I left that confinement of childhood, went out on my own, and was experiencing a lot of things, and people that were part of that purpose started to come into my life. And I shut it off. But David, the minute I got out of the 20 years of confinement, the same people came back into my life. And that's how I knew there was something I was supposed to do. So that was the first dot. The second dot was probably the car accident.
So when you say confinement, you really feel that, do you?
Yes. A lot of people, religion, I think, has its purpose. It's there to make us think. But there's some belief systems that really kind of keep you in a controlled environment where you really are not encouraged to think for yourself. And I was in that for a very long time, and I was struggling with it, not realizing that I wasn't supposed to be there. But when I finally did break free of it, it was kind of like, oh, my brain is normal. I'm not supposed to be there. So I lost 20 years of my life, but it's okay, because all that experience now makes life more richer. I can speak about things on a different level and understand people's, experience and relate to them because I've had something that deeply entrenched that was removed from my life.
And that is the key message, I suppose, to all the episodes. It doesn't matter what your life is like at that moment. It doesn't have to stay like that, but make sure that you learn from what you're dealing with at that moment.
Yes.
Did you think most people don't realise that? I think, because for many years, I don't think I thought about anything. I just think I lived. And I went to work and I came home and I went to work and I came home and I had 2 weeks holiday each year. And I don't think that I reflected at all on what was going on. It was just one day after another. Do you think that's how most people are?
Yeah, and you know what I would love to see is if we could like individually look at our lives and go back to when we started doing that. Because it happens sometime after we leave our parents' environment where they have kind of guided us to some degree, and then we get on our own and we kind of lose some kind of guiding force where we probably should have had a really good one, because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like you get lost. Why do we have to get lost? That's my question. We shouldn't have to get lost.
We shouldn't, should we?
No, we shouldn't.
We've got a body's compass that points the way if only we allow it to do that, to point in the way that we should be going. And we've all got that, but it's only when you find it. That's a horrible thing, and that's the annoying thing, that so many people want to find this. I went out with a mate last night and we was having a chat, and he said to me, I don't know what I want to do with my life. So I said, come down, we'll go for a drink, bring a pad, and I'll give you some ideas of what you should be doing. And I pretty much said to him, just jot down 50 things that you love doing, 50 things that you can do, and 50 things that you used to do and you enjoyed. And then we'll look at them and see the themes. And within maybe 10, 15 minutes, it was quite obvious that he shouldn't be working in an office. He should be working at maybe being a builder or interior decorator or something. He liked working with his hands and he liked creating stuff, and he wasn't. And it was just one conversation, and you could see his compass start to sort of twitch, and he suddenly started thinking, I think I might know where to go. And it's amazing. It doesn't take that much effort to find that compass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love how you handled that with him, because that's how I would deal with like a friend of mine. I would do the same thing. It's like, what do you love doing? What ignites your soul? What makes you happy? It could be a little teeny weeny thing that you might think is insignificant, but to somebody else, it's a big deal. It's like you've got to find, we all have something in our spirit that just turns us on. And if we could just find it and like hone into it and pull out what that is, I think we all would have such more meaningful lives.
I agree. Well, this is the end of the show now, and this is the part that we call the Sermon on the Mic, when I'm going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the young Debbie, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the theme, and when it fades you up, this is the Sermon on the Mic. Ooh,
here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Well, Debbie, you're on the cusp of a great adventure. You're 13 and you're about to leave that tiny island of Jamaica and move to the U.S., so get ready. The one thing I want to tell you that you're probably struggling with is that you're dealing with this ability to know and sense things. I know it makes you feel really weird and different, but I promise you that special ability will save your life and lead you to your destiny. Always, always listen to that inner voice and follow your heart, because your heart always speaks the truth. Now, the reason why you feel different now is because what you don't realize is that you're harnessing the power of love. And I know it sounds crazy when I tell you this, but there are no accidents in life. A lot of things that you believe in, that you have known all your life, when you get to this point where I am talking to you, you are going to let them all go because you will know what the truth is, and the truth is love. My strongest advice to you is never, ever give in to your fears. Know that you're able to dream it, and if you can dream it, you can achieve it. You are different for a reason, and in time you'll find out. And from where I'm standing, girl, I'm calling back to you and I'm telling you, you're about to have an amazing life because you're part of a crowd of game changers. I'll see you soon.
Debbie, how can our audience connect with you?
They can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram under Vivadivine, and also they can hang out with me at my blog at vivadivine.blogspot.com.
Debbie, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Debbie Mack, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Awesome.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.